my friends, let's take a look at the orchid collection. First, we'll start off with the Psychopsis. Look at this beauty. This plant requires a lot of water, and it does like it bright. I keep the roots moist at all times. I find that if you let this one dries out too long, it drops the flowers and the buds will blast. I was lucky enough to get 3 flowers at once on this beauty. And here's a bud that's just emerging. If I hold back on water at this point, this bud will turn to yellow and fall off. So I've got to keep this baby moist. For decorative purposes, I've got a little sphagnum moss on top, but I'll take a little bit off so you can see what the roots looks like. Lots of beautiful roots on this plant. And the roots are nice and wet. This will slowly dry out. I watered it this morning. I like to water it in the morning and let it slowly dry out throughout the day. By night, all of that water will be soaked up by the plant. And although I keep it nice and moist, look at the pseudobulb, they're a little bit shriveled. That's an old pseudobulb, and the new one is a little bit more plumped. What an interesting plant. Who knew that it would require so much water to keep this plant nice and happy? This Phalaenopsis also lives in the living room. It's a nice sunny spot. It's getting a lot of morning sun. Currently working on a few spikes. It's actually 2 plants in 1 pot, so I've got a total of 4 spikes on the go. And we've got one more tucked in here, over here, and back there. Should be a wonderful display. The flower is very beautiful and caloric, however, there's no fragrance. And here's the name for this one. It's quite a mixed hybrid. And I've got it potted up in that orchid pot. Very holy. I water this one about twice a week. I'll put it in a bowl and have it soaked. Since there's a lot of air movement, especially in the winter, this can dry out very quickly. So I find a good soak twice a week works well for this orchid. I also have 2 rescues that have been sitting on the coffee table. I'm not sure what the bloom looks like on these. There are no ID. And these I will pot up. I'll put them in, do a 2 orchid in 1 pot, or if I get a 3rd, I will start that 3 orchid in 1 pot, like I've done previously in the past. And the root system looks very good. This I'll repot from moss over to orchid bark. The plants are really nice and healthy and working on new leaves. In this corner, nestled in between the Euphorbia trigona, I've got a bulbophyllum. An interesting little beauty. It's crossed with the bulbophyllum Phalaenopsis, so it does give that long pendulous leaves. Bulbophyllums like it moist, so I try to come by every day and mist this plant. My home's very dry, and I'm surprised that this plant has been doing so well. This is a new growth that is pushed out, nice and fat pseudobulb, and an even newer pseudobulb. Look at that. The leaves are nice and lengthening. Very exciting. I'm gonna let it ramble and scramble a little bit more before I repot. Here's another orchid that's potted up, 2 orchids in one pot. When I find an orchid that I like to purchase 2 of them. This one's also a pyloric orchid. Look at the flower on that. And with the variegated leaves, absolutely stunning. It's in an orchid pot as well, and this one I soak. For feed, I give them a little bit of feed in every watering. A light fertilizer when I water. Here's a quick clip on how I water these orchids. I soak them in lightly fertilized water twice a week for about 15 minutes. That's it for the orchids in the living room. Now let's go take a look at the orchids that I've got tucked in the Ikea cabinet, and those are stored in my bedroom. Let's get into the Ikea cabinet. I get a lot of morning sun, so these plants are getting sun until about maybe 1 p.m. In addition to getting a lot of sunlight, I've also set up grow lights, and that's the supplement on days where it's very dark. Especially in the winter, we don't get a lot of direct sun, so the grow light's very handy. In here we've got the Phalaenopsis Gigantea by Mituo Sun. I've had that one for a while, but it hasn't bloomed in a couple of years. Tineshin Fly Eagle back here. And one of the things that these plants have suffered is a bit of spider mites. So I've been trying to spray with miticide and insecticidal soap to keep these plants from being damaged. This one's a Phalaenopsis Joy Taiwan, and that's bloomed. It's actually a Bellina cross, Phalaenopsis Bellina. You can see the spider mite damage over here, which can be quite detrimental to the leaves. Very unsightly. It's going to take a couple of years for the orchids to grow out of that. And that's a Violacea Indigo. Up front, we've got the Leodoro Sweet Memory. This is a beauty. I've had it for a few years as well. Hasn't rebloomed since I purchased it. And we've got a Trespass by Chilitzii back here. Beautiful white, almost green flower. Let's get this back in. Also was ravaged by the spider mites. We've got the Boba Phillip Elizabeth Ann Buckleberry. I've got it in the cabinet and I miss this one every day. They do like it on a little bit more of a humid side. The sphagnum moss is a little bit dry. I find that helps keeping this one humid. This little beauty, it's the Harjin Fancy. Beautiful dark red flowers. Definitely recommend if you can find one of those. A good treat to have in your collection. We've got Trespass Green. A little bit of a setback on this one. The smaller leaves are coming in a little bit smaller than I would like. But although the leaves have been coming in small, she's been blooming quite a bit. Most people would cut the spike off since the leaves are not big. I prefer leaving it on and having the plant work through its own growth habit. The root system looks great. Might need to up the nutrients on this one, put in a little bit of a slow release fertilizer in the soil, but I'm going to watch and see how it goes. Down on the second shelf, we've got 2 leafless orchids. Leafless, but mine has pushed out a couple of leaves each plant. So I've got 3 of these beauties going. And what I like to do for these, I mist them as well. Sometimes I'll soak them, but if I'm a bit in a rush, then I will mist them, and I think that suffice. It's bloomed a number of times. I've got some spent spikes here that I'll need to cut off. And the blooms are really nice, delicate little blooms. Now back here we've got the Cattleya schilleriana. When I received this one, it was almost dying, no roots, and it's plumped up quite nicely. Right beside the Cattleya schilleriana, we've got Phalaenopsis schilleriana. And I find schillerianas can be a little bit finicky. I'm surprised this one's been alive in my collection for so long, and has actually given me some flower spike. However, the last flower spike died and dropped off. Now this little beauty is a no ID. It's a regular Phalaenopsis that I picked up while shopping. I believe it's pyloric, I don't remember. We'll have to see when that blooms again. And back here is another no ID. Lovely blooms on them. I've got quite a few of these no IDs hanging around. I should actually pot them in an arrangement. Now this beauty is the Phalaenopsis Cervi Red. After about 5 years in my collection, the plant finally decided to bloom. We had 5 years of growth and tons of roots. I've discovered that this one likes it humid. So this is a plant that I come by and I mist every once in a while to keep her on the humid side. Beside the Cervi, I've got a Sidera japonica. I know this one likes it cool, but you know what? It's done very well by the window, getting a lot of sun. It's pushed out a lot of roots. It's now twinned with the Cervi because the roots have gone into the Cervi pot, which is interesting. The new leaf is nice and long. So I know this plant's happy. I'm just hoping that she'll bloom. Here's a Hoya spardioides, which I'll cover the Hoya tour in a couple of days. We've got another no ID Phalaenopsis. This one's a mini mark, and I picked this one up at the Orchid show back in February. It's also working on a little spike right there. And I was so excited to pick this one up. I believe it was only $20 at the show, which was quite reasonable for a mini mark. Oh, here's the name of the vendor. I can't wait for the show in February. I'm gonna definitely try to save up and purchase a lot of goodies at the show. Now this beauty is another Cervi. I've got 2 of these Cervi. This is the Cervi alba. And the alba is a yellow flower. It's actually really gorgeous. Let's see if we can get that in the sun so you can get a nice look at this flower. Gorgeous. And this plant, this has given me 2 spikes. It came with 1 spike when I purchased it back at the orchid show in February. Then it pushed out a 2nd spike, and every couple of months I've got a flower to enjoy. This one was also ravaged by the spider mites, you can see on the older leaves, but lucky enough the newer leaves have been doing very good, so I'm hopeful that I've got the spider mites under control. This is a pot of 3 mottled leaf orchids. This one's a no ID. Just gorgeous leaves, and look at the little flower. This one's a sequential bloomer. The spikes, it keeps lengthening. I'm thinking of cutting it back. The individual flower on this one is not as showy as a nice spike with lots of flowers. This is a Phalaenopsis equestris that died back and pushed out a little leaf. I think that was ravaged by spider mite as well, but she's recovering with a nice little leaf and some new roots, lots of healthy roots. So I'm hoping that she'll make a full recovery. Back here is another no ID Phalaenopsis. Beautiful mottled leaves, which I really enjoy. Back here I've got a Vanda type orchid that I picked up at Calasantes. I don't know what variety it is. It might be a Neo-Phoenicia Vanda. I'm hoping this one will give me some spikes soon so we can identify the flower. Ideally, these like to have their roots out in the open, but I've opted to pot this up in sphagnum moss to keep it moist. My conditions are a little bit dry and too dry to keep an orchid bare rooted. Now down here, I recently repotted a few plants. Back here in the tray, we've got a few seedling Cattleyas. It's the Amazing Thai Rainbow. I've got 3 of these beauties. It was one purchase of a plant, and once I received it and unpacked it, I noticed there was 3 seedlings wrapped together, so I've separated them. I also have some Tolumnias, and they're just assorted Tolumnias. I'm not sure of the ID. One did come with an ID tag, Gyrac Flyer Lady in red. But we'll see when they bloom what they actually are. This little guy back here, let's get the tag. Promania xanthina, I recently repotted as well, and there'll be a repotting video coming out shortly. Purchased from Crystal Star, and there's a lot of new growth from this baby, but it hasn't bloomed since I've brought it home. So I'm hoping with the repotting, it will encourage this plant to give me some flowers. This guy is Phal Aphrodite. Beautiful white flowers. It's just a small little seedling, so we've got a couple more years before we get a spike in flowers. Another seedling is a Phal Bellina, and this one's the fire type. Potted up in moss right now to keep the roots nice and hydrated. Once she gets a little bit bigger, I'll transfer her to a bit of moss and bark. I also have another Schilleriana, since Schillerianas are not my best plant. I purchased the second one just in case the first one dies. This one is the Silver Leaf by the Round variety. And the older leaves a little bit round. We'll see as the plant gets mature how the leaves fare. I almost missed another Vanda type. This one back here, which is in full sun. I'll bring you a little bit closer. But actually, I'll pull it out. It's a Vanda type from Calicenti. I went back on a shopping trip and they had a few of these. They were down to $10 each, so I picked up another. The roots are a little bit worse for wear, so I've put her in the glass container, keeping it very moist so that it will push a lot of root growth. And I can see some tiny little roots there, so let's cross our fingers for a full recovery on that. Now the bottom shelf, I've got a few more orchids tucked in here. Here's a beauty that's in flower. It's the Tangerine Fire Mini Sun. This one's a mini Cattleya. I don't have a lot of Cattleyas, and the mini Cattleyas have really sparked my interest to get a plant in the Cattleya family that's mini, that is perfect for me. Beautiful roots. And I picked this one up from orchidmart.ca. Actually, no, this one I picked up from the orchid show last year, or was it the year before? I can't remember, but it's a reliable bloomer. It's giving me blooms twice this year, so I believe that one can bloom twice a year. Now back here, an unexpected orchid in spike. Look at this little gem. I was not expecting this at all. And it's the Lupus grassa. This one I purchased on a whim. I believe it was probably about $15 at the orchid show. I thought that was a good deal to try something that I've never grown before. And so far it likes it in my care. I'm thinking this is a cool bloomer, because this bloom is coming in the winter. And I see a new pseudobulb right there. I'm thinking after this is done blooming, I'll definitely do a repot. We'll move this one up to a 4-inch pot, giving some more room for these two new pseudobulbs. 2 growth points, that's great. Be careful getting her back in spot. I also have a jewel orchid. Remember when these were being sold at Valley View for $10 each? And the secret to keep these happy is to keep them watered. They like to stay moist, so I don't let it dry out. Staying in the orchid family, I've got 2 Phalaenopsis over here, both the same variety. It's the Joy Fairy Tale. The flower on these are amazing. And we've got a little spike on this one. I find that these like to stay moist. What an interesting plant. If I keep this one on the dry side, the leaves wilt and it tends to pout. And I've got 2 of these little guys. I believe they've bloomed twice so far this year already, and working on another spike. That's really good. I'm glad I figured out that these like to stay on the moist side, because they were struggling for quite a while. And I was like, why are you struggling? And I thought, let's give it a little bit more water and see what happens. We also have the variegated vanilla orchid back there. I need to do something about this. It definitely needs more space. I've tried to wrap it around the short totem pole. It needs more space, but it also likes to stay humid. We'll have to figure that out. That's it for the orchids in the Ikea cabinet. Now let's take a look at my orchid shelf. On the orchid shelf, we've got a few orchids, but now I've been into the Hibiscus and the African violets, so a few of those are tucked in here, and we'll do a tour on that shortly. Now, first orchid we've got on the shelf here is the Phalaenopsis hieroglyphica. I love the hieroglyphica. It has a trait that it gives little keikis. And the keiki I'll leave on for a little bit longer. I like that it's got 3 roots already and 2 leaves. So if it has 2 leaves and 2 roots, the rule of thumb is that you can remove it and pot it up. It also tends to give off a lot of spikes. We've got 2 spikes and a new spike emerging. And the root system is wonderful. Down here we've got 2 orchids that are potted up in the orchid pot. This was a beautiful find from Valley View. I'll insert a picture. Just a wonderful orchid. And over here is a Phalaenopsis Dutch Lady. Phalaenopsis Dutch Lady is interesting. I love that it gives off white flowers. But take a look at these mottled leaves. And potted up in a nice orchid pot. Lots of air movement around the roots. And it has a potting history. I picked this one up at the Burlington Orchid Show. And look at that history. From 2003, and I repotted her in 2004. Wow, I'm just excited to have such a beauty in my collection, and one that's been around for such a long time. Whoever put this on sale at the orchid show in the members table, have a look. The little beauty is doing fantastic. We've got Phalaenopsis Germaine Vincent, and ever since I brought this one home, it's been giving a lot of spike. Unfortunately, not giving flowers all at the same time. I've got one flower here and there. It'd be a nice show to see all these spike in bloom. But I've got to be happy with what I'm getting. This bloom is also very fragrant, smells like cinnamon. And Germaine Vincent is a cross between Speciosa and Violacea Indigo. This is also another cutie, which I really love. It's a Phalaenopsis cross Appy Eagle by LD Beer King. It gives spike, such a happy plant that every year it gives a spike. And it's sequential, so the spikes will continue to lengthen. Let's hope both will bloom at the same time. Lots of roots on this one. There's so much roots that it's crawled over into a second pot. So now I am reluctant to move this plant. This was a recent repot, and you will see the repotting video. Nice firm leaves. I believe this one can be watered in a few days because or watered now because the media is dry. This beauty is of Phalaenopsis Gigantea cross. I don't remember the name on this one. And the roots are stuck to the pot. It's been in this location for a very long time. Also a no ID. But it did have beautiful flowers. I wonder if the flower was peloric, that's why I purchased it. The flowers have to be unusual for me to pick up a no ID Phalaenopsis. Now this little darling is Phalaenopsis tobacco tex. Beautiful flower, and oops, I ripped a root. Lots of beautiful roots on this one. Most of these plants haven't been moved. For watering, I use a turkey baster and squeeze a bit of water in the pots every 3 days. This is a Phalaenopsis red apple. Beautiful leaves on the red apple. And we've got a little spike right there. Let's move this calumnia out of the way. It's like a lipstick plant, and I'll do a tour on those. So we've got another Bellina. Plant friends, you know Bellina is my absolute favorite orchid. So I've got quite a few of them sprinkled around. And plant friends, by the window, I've got a few more orchids. We've got one more of those Psychopsis, and this one's the triple lip. So we've got the lip mimicking the petals, or the petals mimicking the lip. It's so interesting. It's quite a little beauty. This window is very sunny. I often worry about these plants, but what can I do? I don't have a lot of space to maneuver them around the house, and they're adapting. This is Phalaenopsis Gigantea. I notice it's pushing out quite a bit of roots at the top of the media, which is lovely. That means the root system is probably very nice in the pot. You might remember this one that I picked up at one of the orchid shows for a very good price. It's doing well. It's bloomed twice for me so far this year, no blooms, and I'm okay with that. Rest and work on leaves and roots. She's working on a new leaf at the moment. That's really nice. Down below, I've got a second Phalaenopsis Gigantea. This one's bloomed a few times, twice, or maybe 3 times in my hair. Working on a new leaf, and although they're in a very sunny spot, these Phalaenopsis are doing well. I'm thinking the Giganteas can handle a little bit more sun, especially since they've got that white material over the leaves. I'm thinking that's there to protect them from very sunny conditions. So I shouldn't worry too much about them. We've got another Phalaenopsis over here that's potted up in the orchid pot, and this one's gorgeous. You'll notice I have some Super Thrive. I like to put that in when I water every time, and it provided 2 spikes. Beautiful flowers. I'll insert a picture. Along with the Psychopsis, I've got a number of orchids in this plastic tub. Let's go around the cactus, and I'll do a tour on the cactus and succulents in a separate video. This one is a one of those coconut orchids. Let's see if we can get the name on that. Maxillaria variabilis. Beautiful roots. I also keep this one on the moist side I water it almost every day. It's a sphagnum moss. Look at that root system, tons of roots. No blooms yet. I purchased this one back in February, so I'm hoping to get some blooms on it. I'm not sure what to do to encourage that to bloom, but we'll figure it out. I also have a Cattleya in here, one of the big varieties. I don't often purchase these, but this one has an amazing bloom. It's the Amazing Thailand. This one isn't the rainbow variety, just a regular Thailand. The seedlings that I have is a rainbow variety, and those have an even more showy flower. Beautiful blue roots. And this one, I believe I'll repot it after it blooms. This is a new growth that I received this year on the plant, so I'm hoping it will push out some flower buds. It would be awesome to have flowers on this, but if it flowers, once it flowers, that's when I'll do a repot. I also have a Maxillaria tenafolia down here. Two new growth points. That's a new growth, and new growth right there. A few wrinkled pseudobulbs, but it came with the wrinkled pseudobulbs. The media is a bit on the crispy side, so I could water this one a little bit more often. If you know how to make these maxillarias bloom, comment below and let me know. They're a new variety for me, so I'm not versed in the care for the maxillaria. It's trial and error. Now this beauty is another maxillaria, Porphystalis. And this one is more of a creeper. It creeps along the top of the pot. It's given me a few pseudobulbs. This one's new. It looks like this one's new, and we've got another one emerging right there. That's a good sign. So I keep the maxillaria, the Cattleya. The Cattleya is in a container. I don't want to overwater it, so I keep it in a little pot. And back here is the Psychopsis, which the Psychopsis likes to stay moist, so I water this one every day. Has new growth, which is great. Potted up in moss. I see some nice roots, and here's that gorgeous flower. Nice showy flowers, and such an easy plant to care for as long as you can keep it moist. I've got one more orchid down here. Ooh, nice beautiful new leaves. It's the Yofan Boss, a reliable bloomer. This one's bloomed quite a bit for me. I keep it in this nice sunny spot, which it seems to like. And it's tucked right next to the cactus and succulents and a few Hoyas on the shelf and some Haworthias. Almost forgot this orchid in the back. This one is a Phalaenopsis Joy Fairy Tale Joy, and it's working on a spike, and it has some beautiful roots. See if we can gently. Wow, it's working on a flower bud. It's a beautiful orchid, nice bright yellow. The lower leaves about to fall off, which is fine. You've got to expect that. With these, the lower leaves tend to fall off. After that, they push out new leaves. And I find that after they bloom, that's when they work on new leaves as well. Wow, such a little beauty. Do we have some more orchids? Am I forgetting something? Yes, I've got one more orchid, and it's in this bin with the Hoya and a few Tillandsias, and I'll cover those in a tour of the Hoyas. This one is a Phalaenopsis Vivian. I just love these variegated leaves. Gorgeous. And she's working on a spike. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see the pictures of these flowers in months to come. As soon as a plant gives me a flower, I post a picture. And I often do a reel and a short as well. We'll leave that there. I'll need to find a nice pot for this beauty while it works on its spike. Thanks for watching, plant friends. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and follow me on Instagram at Life of Bellina.